evening, everyone. The time is now 7 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Development Committee meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Sulkida.
Here.
Folk.
Here.
Bongard.
Here.
Munn.
Here.
Gem.
Here.
Spellman. Petrilla.
Here.
Wirball.
Here.
Bessner.
Here.
Weber.
Is Steve on Zoom, Jim?
He's on there, but he hasn't responded.
Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion to move public comments to after the roll call. There's a resident that would like to speak before an agenda item is discussed, so...
So moved.
Okay, moved by Petrella.
Second.
Seconded by Gem. Roll call, please.
Gem.
Yes.
Spellman. Petrilla.
Yes.
Bessner.
Yes.
Weber. Sulkida.
Yes.
Folk.
Yes.
Bongard.
Yes.
Munn.
Yes.
Okay, public comments. Does anyone have anything to say? Come on up, just first and last name, please.
Steve Leffler. I emailed all of you today, and I asked that email be put into the public record. I'm not going to, for brevity's sake, it's regarding the 504, the River 504 development, but it was a lengthy email, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I've got a couple of other items I would like to suggest. First, public comment should be the first item on the agenda, or close to the first item on the agenda. And before anybody takes any votes at any of the meetings, the public should be heard. And I know this, you might think that this will lengthen meetings, and maybe it will a little bit, but I think it's important that the public get heard. The other item I wanted to discuss today was the city's financial situation is, as you all know, pretty poor right now. We're 90 million or so in debt, and we shouldn't be spending any money that we don't have. We're entertaining the idea of a 4% increase on the levy, and that's, there's going to be folks who are going to have some pain from that, and we should be considering very carefully what we're doing with the taxpayers' money. That's all I got for you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comments? No? Okay. Close public comments. So next up is the omnibus vote. I need a motion and a second to approve the omnibus vote.
So moved.
Moved by Ed.
Second.
Seconded by Jamie. Roll call, please.
Gem.
Yes.
Petrilla.
Yes.
Bessner.
Yes.
Weber. Sulkida.
Yes.
Folk.
Yes.
Bongard.
Yes.
Munn.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Okay, next up is item 4A, a recommendation to approve and execute an acceptance resolution for public utility for 4085 East Main Street.
That was on
I'm sorry, my mistake. 4B is Plan Commission recommendation to approve a PUD preliminary plan and final plat subdivision for McGrath Kia parking expansion, McGrath Business Center PUD. I think Ellen, you're going to present. Go ahead.
Thank you. Chris McGrath is seeking approval of plans to construct additional parking for McGrath Kia on the final remaining parcel in the McGrath Business Center PUD. Plans include 475 parking stalls, landscaping consistent with the rest of the PUD, shared access from Route 64 and cross access to the west, and stormwater detention at the south end. A final plat of subdivision plats the property as a single lot and establishes required easements. Plan Commission reviewed the plans on August 19th and recommended approval, and there are no remaining staff comments.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Ron?
Thank you. Is this going to be a whole paved lot, correct?
Correct.
And they're meeting all the King County stormwater
Correct.
requirements? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Nothing? Okay. Can I get a motion and a
Approved.
Moved by Bob.
Second.
Seconded by Ron. Roll call, please.
Gem.
Yes.
Petrilla.
Yes.
Bessner.
Yes.
Sulkida.
Yes.
Folk.
Yes.
Bongard.
Yes.
Munn.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Item 4C, Plan Commission recommendation to approve a PUD amendment and PUD preliminary plan for River 504 Row Homes Brownstone PUD. Ellen, go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property located at the northeast corner of First and Prairie Streets is the last remaining parcel in the Brownstone PUD. The property was initially planned in the year 2000 for 10 townhome units. Then in 2005, a PUD amendment changed the intended land use to mixed use. Last fall, J&B Builders submitted a concept plan for the property proposing 2-unit dwelling, and now zoning applications and plans have been submitted for this project. Proposed are 4 2-unit buildings facing First Street with attached garages at the rear. Brick as the primary facade material. The buildings are 4 stories in height with a partial 4th floor that steps back at the rear. 15 parking spaces on First Street. Streetscape improvements along First and off-site sidewalk connection, connecting the Prairie Street sidewalk on the north end to the Riverwalk. A PUD amendment is required to allow the change in use, the proposed building height, and the reduced setback from First Street. Plan Commission held a public hearing on August 19th and recommended approval. They did add a condition that 2 landscape islands be added within the First Street row of parking with trees and plants incorporated. We've worked with the applicant, and they are proposing to add 1 landscape island. 2 were not feasible because of utility conflicts in First Street. So the applicant has prepared a site plan showing the location of 1 island. The committee could accept that island, which would reduce parking spaces to 14, or choose not to add the island and keep the 15 proposed spaces.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. Questions, comments? Jamie?
I just have some questions about this because my understanding is with the First Street plan, the original plan, this was supposed to have retail on the main floor and residential above, and that seems to have been completely abandoned in this plan. And there just seemed to be a lot of inconsistencies with what the original vision was for the continuation of this street. And now that we have filled the grocery store with Whole Foods and we're trying to complete this whole vision, it seems like we should be continuing that streetscape the way that it was intended, but we're now allowing this developer to go a completely different direction and change the vision of that street. And I'm just not sure I understand why that's the case.
Yes, I believe I can let the applicant speak to the marketability, or the market conditions that led to changing from a mixed-use project, which they did propose a couple years ago, to this residential-only project.
Just get your first and last name, please.
Brian Bowie.
And I'm Julie Salliers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we did propose the mixed-use development. The overall cost of that type of development with the parking garage as well as the common element did not make the project feasible. With this project, we did develop space along the First Street with the flex space that home offices could potentially fill those units and still create this is a transitional parcel that takes us from the commercial into the park, into the brownstone. So we felt that this type of use was a better use for the property and more feasible from a financial standpoint.
We also tried to, it's similar to the original approval prior to the milestone 2, which was 10 units, residential units, no mixed use. We have 8 units, so we've decreased the density somewhat to try to, provide that transition to Mount St. Mary's Park.
Okay, thank you. I do have some more questions for staff, actually. And it relates to the density and the way that this is packed into that small space, where it is really pushed up against the sidewalk in a different way than the rest of the streetscape is, with a real lack of any kind of tree shade along the sidewalk. So if you're walking that way, you come from where the brownstones are, or I guess not the brownstones, but the other developments that's there along the street. You move into this area, and now there's no tree shade when you're walking along the sidewalk. you know, with the western exposure, with the sun hitting you, you've got just cars and then sun and building right there. And I guess I'm just trying to understand visually what we're doing on this street, which is supposed to be one of our, you know, one of our iconic areas that we've tried to build. And I understand that they have an economic, you know, an economic thing they have to fulfill, but we had a vision for this street, and I'm trying to understand with Plan Commission allowing this through, are they following along with the original vision? Is this just entirely up to what a developer wants and doesn't want, or are we in some way bound to what the vision was from the city of what our plans were? And I'm just trying to understand, you know, if that's something that we would like to continue to do as a city or as a council, you know, based on feedback that we hear from people and what we're looking for as far as the amount of density that we have there, or, you know, the walkability or the way that people are traversing our downtown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this streetscape design, it's a little bit more narrow than the Milestone Row. The width of the public way in front of Milestone Row is quite a bit wider, which does allow for more planter beds and trees. This design is more simplified. I think the idea was that since it's at the end of the first streetscape, that it may be appropriate to kind of transition down from a full-fledged kind of highly designed streetscape to a little bit more simplified as you get away from kind of the core of downtown. But that is part of their request, and part of the scope of review of this project is that streetscape design. I think Plan Commission, they had that condition. They did want to see more trees, and their solution was kind of to add a couple landscape islands to provide those trees. But we could look to see if there's opportunities to add trees in grapes. I think given the way the plan is right now, there wouldn't be the width, but there might be opportunities to kind of widen in certain spots along the building, and we can assess that if there's interest.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
So Ellen, just to clarify, this came before P&D. The concept came before back in November, and I know we didn't take a vote, but the overwhelming consensus was we were okay with the updated plan.
Yeah, that plan was very similar to this plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Minus some of the treescape and stuff.
Yeah, that wasn't quite finalized yet,
Right.
but yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Ron?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to see actually more trees with the grates in there. I think that would improve the looks a lot. And the only thing that concerns me is there's something about putting a sewer line in and removing 4 trees on Prairie Street. Okay, I will not accept that. I'm not going to cut down mature trees when there are other options to put that pipe in, correct? There are other options?
We can assess that. I think it was deemed most efficient to have the trees removed, and there's spacing requirements for the utility lines that are under.
I understand that.
But we can look into other
I would
options.
definitely want that done. I will not approve it if we're going to cut down mature trees just to make it more efficient. There's got to be ways. I mean, if you got to extend it a little bit, but I will not support it if we're going to cut down those trees.
Okay. Bob?
Yeah, no, thanks, Alan, and everybody, but just having walked that site a couple of times in the last 2 weeks, so where the millstones are now, so we have the sidewalk that's already there, will that be extended all the way to Prairie Street and kind of line up with the way those are?
It'll line up with the Milestone Row sidewalk, yes.
Which would allow also for the diagonal parking, much like are in front of this.
Correct, yes.
I don't feel comfortable, much like Alderperson Sakaitis, about cutting down mature trees. Having walked the site, there were a number of sewer and storm and electrical things already on the site. Can those not be used to tie into the sewer lines that are being proposed?
Yeah, it's all about the underground routing. I'd have to look at the plans to get into the details, but we'll look into other options to try to save the trees.
That'd be something to lose those trees and the scape that we have just to keep the overall look. I guess I look at it to be congruent from what we already have, starting at Arcedium and heading south, and make sure that we have the accessibility for people to walk and to bike along those places too that are already being done. So much like my counterpart, Alderperson Sakaitis, I wouldn't be able to approve that without some of those things being taken into consideration.
Okay.
So, and then I guess my last question for the applicant, which always bugs me, sorry, it's the accountant in me coming out, but with the proposed size and cost of those units, what is your market? I mean, who are you looking at that might potentially buy one of those units?
Somebody that is moving out of a large single-family home that wants to live in downtown St. Charles. We've had a lot of interest in this type of product. It is out of the price range for most individuals that inquire, but there's a handful that have showed interest.
Okay. Yeah, just like I said, that's just to me, that's a very narrow market for people that would want to spend that kind of money to have a home like that that's 4 stories. Look at people with mobility issues. There are elevators and options for people that would want to do that.
Yeah.
So sorry, just me looks at it as a very limited market in order to market something of that size at that price point. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Ed, go ahead.
I had just 2 quick questions, either for staff or for Ellen or for the applicant. That 3.4 setback, could you talk a little bit about that? I'm trying to visualize, are we literally talking about a 3.4 section of sidewalk? Are the doors from the facades opening up on that?
So it's from the property line, which is basically the edge of the sidewalk, to the face of the building. There's no doors that open up. The doors are on the sides of the building. So there's no doors that will open up onto the...
And then in regards to the 225,000 or so city assistance, is that basically a swap for us buying our streetscaping or the developer?
I believe Derek will be talking more about that on the next item.
Okay, fair
the
enough.
cost.
Okay, thank you.
In regards to the setback, the PUD requires us to donate 2 feet to the city along First Street. Our proposal is donating 3.5 feet to the city, and for the difference between, we would have a 5-foot setback, but we would have 1.5 foot of sidewalk on the row home side of the property line, and the rest of the public sidewalk would be in the city's property.
Gotcha.
So that's why we're donating an extra 1.5 foot, which is reducing. We're keeping the streetscape even with the building to the north.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. And first of all, I want to apologize for not being there. My son got injured at a football game. We're actually at the Fox Valley Orthopedics right now because he tore his ACL. So please excuse me, and I apologize. But I wanted to say that I am in support of having the residential on the first floor. Obviously, markets change and things evolve, and I feel like at the end of the street, I don't think it's going to be an issue not having commercial or on the first floor. And then secondary would be, I'm in favor of having as much parking down there as possible. I'm not opposed to removing both islands and maintaining as many spots as possible. Sorry, that's all I have to say, and I might have to be skipping out if the doctor comes into the room, so I apologize. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thanks, Steve. All right, David?
Sure. A couple of things I want to echo with my colleagues too, and a couple of questions. I don't know, you might answer them, Ellen, or the developer, but so again, the trees, I mean, I'm going to have to go into that camp. I mean, do we happen to know, like, for instance, where the trees are now, I mean, what other utilities are there? Like, is gas there, do you know, or because, like, do you want to remove them, put the sewer line there, and then put the trees back on? Is that the plan, or just to remove them altogether?
There would be replacement trees.
On top of the right-of-way?
Within the parkway, within maybe 5-ish feet of the utility line.
Okay. Is that safe to put a tree over, like, a new pipe?
Yeah, it won't be directly over it, and that condition exists in town.
Okay.
Public Works did review, and they were okay with the proposed trees.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just still am not a big fan of removing those trees. If there's a way to go into the sidewalk or something, or the street even. I know, I mean, we have gas main under Illinois. They were just fixing it near Francesca's. It's right almost in the center of the street, right? So, I mean, it can be done. I would just like to, if you can entertain look into creative solutions to that. That would be great. And then I'm not sure if I'm reading this correct. Does the sidewalk on First Street go all the way to the street? Like, because I know we don't have a connection to Sammy's yet, but I can't.
No, it stops at the corner, so it turns the corner, but there's not a stub that goes all the way to the pavement of Prairie.
And so that's obviously not being considered because there's no sidewalk across the street?
Correct. We wouldn't want to send people that way since there's no safe receiving sidewalk.
Is there okay. No, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I'd like to extend that sidewalk eventually. Can we rough it in, or is there some way to prepare to do that in this while we're doing this, or is it just we should wait until we come up with
We can try to verify that there wouldn't be any future conflicts with doing that.
I also don't want any islands. The bed, what was it that you mentioned? Crates, I think?
Great.
I mean, however we can put some additional green, trees or on First Street would be great. No pun intended, sorry. And then you're removing the trees also on Cobblestone, is that right? On the north side?
Yes.
Okay. And those will be replaced?
Yes.
All right. And then lastly, well, two more things actually. So this particular image kind of irked me a little bit. I don't know what page it's on. It's the building height comparison, where it compares the height to the apartments that are just across the street from the Whole Foods, and then also it's a west elevation, and then there's a south elevation. So that's if you were in the park looking north, I assume. That's if I'm understanding that. This looks massively huge compared to so the joist or the roof trusses for the fourth story on these row houses is literally above the roof line of the brownstones. I mean, that's how big we're talking here. Okay. And then the triangular portion of the roof, is that just open space then? And maybe that's a developer question. Why is that so tall? It just looks so massive. Is it possibly this one? This one I'm looking at here.
Like the pitch of or the height of the peak of the...
I'm just drawing a line straight over. I mean, there's such a huge gap there. It's like...
And again, the building was designed to step down toward the brownstones.
Got it.
Those back levels are underneath the 49-foot required height right now. The peak toward the west side is a fourth level that is a flex space up.
Like an attic or something?
It could be built out into an additional bedroom or recreational space off the back deck.
And then my last question is, when I was on Planning Commission, I recall, there's a flat front here. Do we not require when we have, facades, we have to have stepping or whatever the planning is that, so this is okay, given our code?
Stepping back is not required. There was something in the First Street PUD with some of the earlier phases that were amended over time, but they are requesting a deviation to allow a higher height at the front.
Flat, okay.
Yeah.
And the building does step in the middle 4 foot back.
Right, okay, so it's just, when you're looking from the looking north, it's not gonna be a straight?
No.
Okay, so it kind of breaks and then, got it. Okay, I do see that on the aerial, so. Okay, I think the trees, and that's really the bulk of my comments as well, so.
Good, David?
Yeah.
I just had one other question. How many of these will be built initially? Will they all be built at one time? Is this a phased project?
We will definitely be starting with 2 of the buildings, and depending on how the sales go, would continue with the 3rd and 4th buildings right thereafter.
So if the first building doesn't sell well, what happens?
We have 1 building spoken for, and I'm discussing other potential sales with other buildings right now.
Okay. Not that I would hope for that or wish that wouldn't happen, but to speak to Alderperson Gemm's point, we do have, certain price points in the city that are, we have things on the market right now that aren't aren't going well.
Understood.
Or quickly at least, that are in that same or above that price point. And I'm concerned that we build one of these or two of these, and then we have open plots that then don't get developed, and then we're in a situation where what could be built there at that point, because now you have half of a development. So I guess that's another concern that I have here. If we're not building an entire development all at once, that's congruous, that would be another major concern of mine. So, thank you.
Ron, go ahead.
Go. So, to the developer here, I presume that you're borrowing the money from a bank, right? And the bank has looked at the financials, and they think this will work, correct? Okay, so therefore I'm okay with that, because the bank's not gonna lend someone money unless they believe in the project. I understand your point, but I still think that I'm gonna leave that up to the developer about price points. I'm not gonna start dictating, we don't want this level price, but we want this.
Thanks, Ron. Anyone else? Ryan?
So, Derek, if you didn't go with, 4-row homes, I mean, you went with something denser, would you be able to build something denser and keep those trees? The likelihood that you could build something, denser and still keep the trees.
I don't know, that may be a better question for a planner. So I don't know.
Ellen? No. So I'm just trying to keep this, I mean, the reality that you're going to be able to do some type of development, whether it's, 4-row homes or, to Alderman Munz's point, something that's more denser that we have on First Street, the likelihood that, are you going to be able to have both of these things? And again, I don't have the map in front of me and thinking through what possibly could go there, but what else you have on First Street, the likelihood that you're going to be able to keep that is going to be, I would assume or presume, it's going to be tough or it's going to be tight.
Yeah, I think it is going to be tight, and you can already see on First Street and other spots where our trees have actually gotten bigger, and they actually are kind of getting in the way of our streetscape. And it's great there because of the shade that it provides, but it also does create conflict, especially when you're on First Street and you're trying to do things like outdoor dining, or you have something like Scarecrow and you have a lot of people walking around. So, yeah, the bigger the building it would be, I think the tighter it could potentially be,
So that was the first part. I know we're talking about the trees and, some concern with that. The second was this question of, the original plan called for, a denser model having first floor retail, and you guys changed that. To Alderman Sokaitis' point, I don't have any concerns. Ultimately, you guys, know the financing, the funding of this, and we're against such a price point and making this work, because you wouldn't get into this if you didn't, if it wasn't going to work. Can you remind us why the original plan of going with a more dense option and having the first floor, retail and having a more compact, dense footprint in there wasn't going to work?
Trying to finance a 50,000 square foot, one building project with 20 units without 75 to 80% of them pre-sold would have been a difficult financing project for that parcel.
Minus the trees, too.
Minus the trees. And again, this splits the development into 4 buildings, which from a financing standpoint, costs a lot less. We have a lot less risk out there, but we also have a lot less building per se to build.
The initial concept too was more of a commercial style with a steel structure, a lot of common space that we had to provide, as well as the mechanicals were pretty, because of the number of units in the small amount of space, they were very expensive. So that's why we kind of look back to the original, what was originally approved, more residential style. It'll still be high-end construction and quality construction, but it's a wood frame structure, more residential style mechanicals, and no common space.
Literally, we would have been over 500 and a quarter to 550 square foot for the condominium building that we would have had to sell units at. From that standpoint, I'm not sure St. Charles could support that.
Yeah, so again, looking at some of my notes, and I'm not sure if Steve is still on the call, but I would agree. I still think, like we did 6 months ago, I still think it's a good use of the space. I think if there was a appetite or the opportunity to do something more dense and following that original vision, it sounds like you guys would pursue it. The reality is that that's not. So we have a choice to make of, if you don't want to pursue this option, then you still have First Street kind of undeveloped, so.
Good, okay. Anybody else before I make my comments? Okay. So, a lot of great points up here. I just want to say that I do not support cutting down the right-of-way trees, so I think I'm with Ron and Bob and David. And I think you have to find a way to work around those trees, the mature trees. You've got less risk, less cost, so we need to be able to work this out. I think trees in the front, if we can, just explore that, just to see if that's an opportunity. I'm not in favor of islands with trees in them, taking up parking spaces, so we need the parking to help out the businesses down there. Trying to think, the sidewalk. So the sidewalk appears to be concrete with brick borders, so it doesn't appear to match the sidewalk to the north. Is there a way we can look at, or at least explore looking at some consistency with the sidewalk? Is that something we can?
Yes, we can. I believe that would change the cost of the improvements. I think the idea behind this design was to be kind of in keeping with the thought of the streetscape along the Ultra building. A similar design was used with concrete and then the bordering of the brick. But we can look into if there's an opinion.
It's not a deal breaker, just to kind of explore it. Overall, I like the use, so I'm fine with it. And that's pretty much all I have. So if you have all those comments, then I'm looking for any other comments or questions up here. Everybody's good? So I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve.
I have a question, quick question. Does the motion, I mean, we have a couple of requests. Should we bake into the motion pending your response, I guess? Because a couple of us made comments that we're not going to support unless something happens.
So we put those we add those.
So why doesn't somebody make a motion with?
Why don't I just make a motion to see if the original one will pass? If it doesn't pass, then you can issue a new one, right? So can I move for approval for the original recommendation? And see if there's a second?
Yeah.
Second. Then you can
make a motion.
Move for approval.
Motion.
Second.
Seconded by Ed. Roll call.
Young,
No.
Petrilla,
Yes.
Fester,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Kulkaitis,
No.
Folks,
Yes.
Baumgart,
Yes.
Munt.
No.
So what is the?
5-3.
5-3.
5-3 to pass it without any amendments to it, correct?
So
they can tear down the trees, right?
Well,
That's what it said. That's what the motion is. We approved it as presented.
but like, we don't know if it can or can't be done, so I mean, do we have an answer? Do you think it can be done to move the sewer line into the street?
I mean, we can look into it and provide an update at council.
I mean, I'm going to say this, there's two more votes out there.
You still have 2 more votes.
2 more votes, so my
this
advice is
official,
to really, I would look into that if I were you. That's just my opinion. You can, so that's where I'm at with it, so.
So right now it will advance to the city council. We can provide updates in regards to working through those items, and then council will have the opportunity to vote on this. This would not be an omnibus item at a council meeting, and then either approve or deny it at that point.
Okay.
And we'll have the answers before, obviously, we vote.
Yes.
We're going to have the answer, okay.
You'll provide us the answers prior to vote.
Could we ask for an update? Sorry.
Yeah.
Could we ask for an update at the next PD meeting?
Yeah, let's get an update at the next meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Ellen did mention they would have it. Thank you, Ellen.
Okay, item 4D, recommendation to approve a resolution authorizing the mayor, city clerk, and city of St. Charles to execute a certain tax increment financing redevelopment agreement between the city of St. Charles and J&B Builders. Derek, go ahead.
Good evening. This is a continuation of the River 504 project that we just discussed. So this would be a TIF redevelopment agreement. The request from the developer would be a maximum reimbursement of $268,000 to assist with the construction of the public parking spaces and public streetscape. The primary reason here is because the improvements that would be made would be primarily from the public side and not necessarily from the private side. So going back to November of last year when they went through, so when the developer went through the concept review process, they were approved for, they were not approved, they were essentially given the kind of the informal go-ahead to move forward with the row homes. Typically with the streetscape that you would see on this would be something that would be more in line with a commercial development. With this being residential, it doesn't really have necessarily that need. And especially also with the parking out front, this is going to be public parking spaces. There's going to be internal parking with the row homes, so they're not going to really be utilized for this development itself and will be for the public. In this area in particular, we do have some parking issues just with the Whole Foods opening. More people are starting to park more and more on First Street, so that would give some of the relief to the businesses in the area. Other site challenges that are really not part of this redevelopment agreement, but it was included in their application. There is unsuitable topsoil. It's going to have to be about 3 feet of it's going to have to be removed because it's silty clay and concrete that I think was deposited from developments in the area was kind of put there temporarily. And then bedrock and utility relocation. So this is something that we deal with a lot in downtown redevelopment projects. When you have bedrock and there's going to be utility relocation, that's just a very, very expensive process. Next year, I just put up kind of a chart of the public improvements breakdown that the developer had requested. At the bottom there, you see the 268 that was provided. That would be the maximum rebate. On the right-hand side, or in the middle, I guess, you would have the public improvement area that would be in red. That is the streetscape and the what is 16 parking spaces right now. And then I do have a photo of what is directly across the street. This is not what would be constructed there, but it does show kind of the corner that would be replicated for the River 504 project. Wanted to demonstrate or show a little bit of an aerial of where the sidewalk that would be extended to the piano factory path. So you can see there the red block. If you go over there and you can see in the photo, you basically have the sidewalk that ends right there. The developer, per the PUD, would have to extend that all the way to the piano factory path. This is not actually part of what would be the redevelopment agreement, but it was this trade-off that was put into it, essentially, that we wanted that path put in there in exchange for doing some of the additional streetscape that is in the First Street area. The funding would come from the First Street TIF district, which you can actually see on the map there. That would be the area that is shaded in blue, and then in the red outline is the project area. There's actually, the project itself is not in the TIF, but I think the district was intentionally put in to include that streetscape area and parking in case it was needed. The rebate would be in 2 phases. So after the parking spaces were completed, which would be their plan, they would go in and do all the parking spaces first. Then they would submit for reimbursement for that. And the second phase would be the streetscape itself. So once everything was built, they would come in and complete the streetscape. They wouldn't want to do that initially because there would be ongoing construction at that time. I should mention that this agreement will need to come back through committee because the First Street TIF district still needs to be extended, and that is going to be scheduled for October 6th. It's really necessary that we extend that TIF district before this agreement actually goes through the approval process, but we did want to bring this forward at the same time as entitlement so that it could be evaluated at the same time. So with that, I can take any questions.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question about this sidewalk.
Go ahead,
I'm sorry. So is the intent that people who want to get into Mount St. Mary's Park are walking basically around instead of crossing the street.
Yes.
Do you think that that is a reasonable expectation
Of the developer?
of people?
Okay.
Do we really think that's going to happen? And, I mean, it's not happening today and there's no sidewalk. So we're gonna put in a sidewalk that won't continue, that won't have, a lip or whatever we call that to continue across the street to Sammy's, because there isn't anything at Sammy's because of all the reasons that doesn't exist. And now we're going to spend all that money to extend a sidewalk down to the river to expect people to walk all the way around to get to a spot that they can see from right where they are. And I guess I'm just wondering if this is a reasonable and wise allocation of resources, and if that expectation is what we're really going to see, or if we're just going to see people crossing the street there like we always did at Illinois and you know, where Maple Leaf is, and then we ended up after a while deciding we were finally going to follow the path that people were taking as opposed to what we wanted them to do.
I think the sidewalk down to the piano factory path puts us in a better position. I think people will utilize it. The Sammy's property right there next to that street, or I guess it would be to the west of Sammy's, that is owned by the Park District. So I have to have a conversation with their staff. This is something that is in their plan to do, but it's not just simply you know, just putting a sidewalk there. It's a little bit more comprehensive to that. If you look to the north of Sammy's, there's, you know, there's no sidewalk there, and there's actually a big utility pole in the middle. So the idea would be having a sidewalk that goes adjacent to Illinois Street, and then also connect to the path that goes along the western edge of Mount St. Mary's Park. So that is the long-term goal. Talking with at least the Park District staff, that is something that they would like to do.
Okay, thank you.
Derek, I think I have a question. You know, water seeks its own level, so if we have 8 units going for $1.9 million, it came out to be about a $15 million plus project. The number I was looking at earlier for the city share was about 240, but I see it's 268, so my percentage might be off. But that's about 1.5 to 2% tops, probably about 1.6% of what they're asking from us, which I'm not saying is a lot. But I guess my question comes down to, if we did those improvements ourselves, is that going to mirror $268,000?
If we did them ourselves?
Yeah.
It could potentially, it would be still in that same ballpark.
Okay, because I'm just trying to find out, you know, if this deal wasn't going to move forward, or if it was close, are we fighting over $200,000 when we have, you know, other projects and other things we need $200,000 for, or $250 in this case? So I'm all for it. I think it's a great project. I just wanted to button up what, you know, the process of how we're getting involved at that level. Like, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Do you need a formal vote on this?
I would at least like to do a straw poll. We will have to come back.
Do you want a formal vote, or you just want a straw poll?
It was just a straw poll.
Okay, so are there any objections to what is discussed, or anybody have any objections?
I have objection to it. I will not vote. I'm not in support of this.
Okay. Any objections?
No.
Me, no.
No? Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so that's 4D. Next up is item 4E, recommendation to approve a minor change to PUD for Harbor House, Foxhaven Square, Building 4, Stewart's Crossing PUD. Ellen?
Okay. Last month, the council approved a minor change to PUD for Harbor House, which is Building 4 in Foxhaven Square, for changes to the PUD approved plans, including building footprint, parking, landscaping, and building elevation. Montauk Pickleball Club has now applied for another minor change. The project scope has been reduced, and Parker Hospitality has provided a letter referencing construction costs as the reason behind the change. Changes to the plans include a height reduction from 2 stories and a rooftop deck to a single story. They're going to shift the building entrance and reduce the design elements around that northern entrance. modified roof line around the building, modifications to window placement, removal of a brick knee wall, also proposes cantilevering of a building wall over the outdoor patio along Kirk. The PUD ordinance does allow a setback encroachment for a patio overhang. The proposed cantilevered overhang is more substantial than the deck overhang previously was. It would need to be considered a patio overhang in order to encroach into the setback as proposed. Staff did suggest a shed roof overhang to the architect, kind of for a more simplified design. The architect prefers this cantilever due to costs and design aesthetics. Engineering plans for the site changes are still under staff review. These slides show the proposed building with renderings, and so the cantilevered overhang is this portion right here. This is the north side of the building. Kirk Road is right here. So this overhang is over the outdoor patio.
Okay, any questions, comments? Ron?
So you're recommending what you wanted in here?
Yeah, the cantilever, if the committee finds this design acceptable, we can consider the cantilever a patio overhang.
So in your opinion, that should be part of this plan, not what they're recommending. Is that correct? You want this to be, you think that they should design what staff requests, correct?
We felt that this design was a little, it's just more substantial than the original patio overhang, so we thought a simplified design might be more aesthetically pleasing, but the architect did provide a response. He is here tonight.
Okay, what his response is because it costs too much. Well, that's, they're saving a lot of money by changing the whole project. So I think they could at least do this to meet what staff's requirements are. What comment?
Any other questions, Jamie?
Mine's just a comment. I understand the economics of this. You know, this is different from what they had originally proposed, but I'm supportive of whatever they need to do to get it done. I just would ask if they could take a look at the aesthetics, and I don't know if maybe putting in some false windows or something that maybe makes it look a little less industrial in such a non-industrial area, whether that is, you know, again, like false windows or maybe in keeping with other parts of St. Charles, thinking about maybe a mural or, you know, something to make it look less like it is on, you know, in the industrial park and more like it's in, you know, on our main street, in our business area would be great. But I'm supportive of this otherwise.
Any questions, comments down here? Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo both of these comments using, you know, the 504 as an example. I think I'm still supportive of the use. I think it complements. I think it, you know, it fits in well and it'll be a good draw. The flip side is it can't look like a warehouse. You know, I'm willing to continue to move forward with it. If we get to the next phase and we don't feel like, you know, everybody's being heard, then, you know, I'm not sure it's going to be able to move forward. But at this moment, I still think it's a good use of the space and trying to hear, you know, some of these, you know, reservations that we have. But, you know, I'd like to see the project move forward.
Okay. I just have a quick comment on the aesthetics, the exterior on the original picture, and I don't know if you have that on, or the original, it had brick accents on, I think, the knee wall, you call it. Could that still be added, a knee wall, and then the brick trim around the door, just to kind of give it, if not, it's not a deal breaker for me, but it looks very, warehousey, you know, it's just to I think just to wow it up a little bit, you know, maybe some base brick or something on there, I don't know, but overall I'm fine with the use, so, okay. Anything else, any other questions, comments? No? Okay, so I need a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Bob.
Second.
Second by Jamie. Roll call, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Petrula?
Yes.
Fessner?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Sulkida?
Yes.
Volk?
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes.
Munn?
Yes.
All right, that passes. So we have item 4F, consideration of amendment to weekend construction hours for certain building permit work in residential areas. Russell Covey.
Yes, good evening. So this is a follow-up discussion to a discussion that we had with the committee last fall regarding the noise ordinance and construction hours and the timing of the construction hours specifically on the weekend in residential areas. This discussion was prompted by some complaints related to a residential demolition project and new construction project. Some background information, the table up here has lists the city's construction hours with residential areas looking at a start time of 7 a.m. and an end time of 7 p.m. And then we have different hours for commercial areas and areas that are not adjacent to residential do not have a time limitation. We have provided information on what exists in some nearby communities that show that they have different weekend start time hours. Some of them have an 8 a.m. start time in residential areas on Saturday, and a number of them also have that on Sunday as well. So there's some feedback from the committee of items that they requested staff to look into. One of those is to look into information regarding noise complaints or trends. So we pulled together some data of complaints that we've received. Since 2020, there were 64 noise complaints that we documented that were related to either zoning or construction-related items, so not noise complaints that are referred to the police department. These are ones that came to code enforcement. And 16 of those related to early construction starts. A lot of the complaints actually were from new development projects, people who had moved into a new subdivision that was still under construction. And then there were a few other projects that were that had a number of complaints, but there really wasn't a pattern to say it was one area of town or one type of development or another. It was really across the board. We also looked at the issue of consistency with other noise regulations. One of the main concerns that we highlighted in the previous presentation was that city infrastructure projects, although technically they're exempt under the noise ordinance, our projects do follow the construction hours that are in the city code for consistency, and so that we're meeting resident and business expectations for construction noise. Additionally, there was a concern about outdoor maintenance and the hours associated with that versus construction activity in residential areas that has the same start time. So the concern was some of those noises may not be distinguishable. Noise is noise, and that the intent of the noise ordinance was to try and control those to reasonable expectations of a similar standard. And so our determination really was that if there's going to be any change to the start time, that should really apply to the type of construction work that would typically be louder or more disruptive than you would typically see with outdoor maintenance activity. So construction work that would be louder than someone mowing a lawn using a leaf blower, for example. So the proposal that's for consideration is to look at regulating construction hours in residential areas by permit type. And what we can do is adjust the start time to 8 a.m. specifically for certain types of building permit work. And this would be residential demolitions, building additions, or new construction. There's a similar model that Naperville follows, where they have a typical 7 a.m. start time, but an 8 a.m. start time for certain types of projects. And then all other types of smaller permit work could still start at 7 a.m., which would be consistent with the outdoor maintenance time restriction. So the concept is that, you know, we adjust these times for the types of projects that are likely to have more of an impact. So this would be projects that would be potentially louder or going on for longer periods of time. It might be work that extends up to the property lines of adjacent properties, or it may impact use of the streets and sidewalk, where there would be closures, parking, or staging. Those are all characteristics that are common with these larger residential projects. So making this change would really be kind of setting a community expectation. There is not complaint data to support that this is necessary to do, but it is common in other municipalities. And in conversations with contractors, we think the impact will be minimal because typically they're trying not to work on Saturdays, and it's only in unusual situations that they do. And if they do, they typically wouldn't be starting regularly before 8 a.m. So with that, we have this proposal for the committee's consideration.
Thank you, Russ. Any questions, comments?
Just one question. On the slide previous, you talked about non-residential starting at 6 a.m. Next to residential, 300 feet or less. Is that correct, the way that they said?
Yeah, so this would be non-residential. So a commercial area that's near a residential area would have a 6 a.m. start time.
But 300 feet or less is what that means? So,
Correct. So if it's adjacent to a residential area in close proximity, then it would be 6 a.m. Because otherwise, there'd be no restriction if you're beyond 300 feet.
but it can't be 7 a.m., I guess is the question.
That's not something that we would propose because commercial construction typically does start earlier.
Okay.
So we wouldn't propose to adjust that. The complaints that we received were primarily from residential areas complaining about residential projects. So it's typically in areas where that type of noise is not expected. So established neighborhoods, those were mainly where the residential complaints came from.
Okay, I think the 300 feet or less threw me versus I'm thinking it should be 300 feet or more next to residential neighborhood, but.
Yeah, at least we haven't had an issue with that provision.
Fair enough.
Since the noise ordinance has been in place that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Jamie, or did you want to? Jamie, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I understand. So we don't really have substantial complaints about this, and we don't really have the contractors that are interested in doing the work this early, but we're still entertaining making a change to the ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Can you go back? I know you said we started talking about this in the fall of '24, but can you refresh my memory? Remind me how we got here, of why we're changing this.
Yeah, there was a situation with the project where we had received numerous noise complaints regarding.
Was it Munhall Glen? Was that?
No, it was a residential tear down in an established neighborhood, and there's demolition work that was ongoing. I think because there was an issue with the extent of the demolition, some unforeseen issues with the process that caused them to continue that process longer than they had planned, and also it was relatively disruptive because of the type of demolition that was going on. So it received a number of complaints.
So it's a one-off in a neighborhood, and we're changing the entire construction timeline for one house, and there wasn't. I mean, I guess you're doing, a massive, 20, 30 houses in a Munhall Glen or something else, but I guess I didn't recall where this complaint was coming from.
That prompted the discussion and the question asked to us, how do our construction hours compare to adjoining municipalities? So we brought that information back, and I think at least the feedback from last fall was that, there was an interest in looking at adjusting the hours.
Ron, go ahead.
So this is about changing it from a 1 hour difference, correct? Is that what it boils down to?
Correct, on the weekends.
This 1 hour difference is I can support this. It's a 1 hour difference for a weekend. We should have it in there so we don't have to deal with someone who wants to start at 7. So I would support this.
Any other comments?
Steve's got his hand up.
Steve, go ahead.
Thank you. All of our wards are very, very different. Obviously, some wards are basically a lot of newer development. Some of us have areas in our ward that are older, that there's a lot of constant remodeling or demolition going on for new projects. So although it's not a huge issue that a lot of people have to deal with, I do want to, just out of respect for some of my other aldermen, that this is an issue in their ward, I definitely would support it for the sake of 1 hour on a Saturday for a resident to have 1 extra hour of sleep and not be bothered. I don't think it's a big deal to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? So I'll just comment that, in the 4th Ward, there's been a significant number of tear downs, and that's fine. I mean, that's 5th Street, 6th Street, one's going on right now in Potawatomi. They're getting ready to do that one. Oak Street and 6th Street, there's issues over there. So it's just obviously it's more concentrated in the older section. And, when somebody's out with a crane demolishing a building at, 7:01 a.m. on a Sunday, it's an issue. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it's an issue. And I think a minor change from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. for Saturday, Sunday for that specific type of work of demolition and major construction is not a big.
I'll move for approval.
Moved by Bongard, seconded by Bob. Roll call, please.
Jim?
Yes.
Petrola?
Yes.
Fessner?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Kulturitis?
Yes.
Folks?
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes.
Munn?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Next item is 4G, recommendation to accept conveyance of the Shanahan subdivision detention basin property and activate special service area number 51 to fund maintenance.
Yes, so this is a 15-lot industrial subdivision access from Couts Road. It was approved in 1998. For whatever reason, there was no owners association established in the subdivision, and the detention basin, which is on its own lot, was owned by one of the adjacent building owners. So that building owner was looking to sell the building, and at that time approached the city about conveying the detention basin property to the city, for the city to own it and maintain it. We do own an adjacent detention basin right to the north, which is shown on the map here. So we decided to take a look at it, inspected the condition in collaboration with Public Works, and based on that, requested that the owner, if they were wanting to convey the basin to the city, would need to overhaul the basin to meet our current standards, and then the city would look into accepting it. And they completed that work over the past 12 months or so. There's still some follow-up needed to establish some plantings and some restoration, but we do have a special service area in place that will be able to fund maintenance once it's accepted by the city. So at this point in the process, the owner was looking for some direction from the committee to continue moving forward. And staff, based on that inspection, is recommending that we accept the basin subject to those final items being addressed, and that we have the owner covering any interim or transition costs associated with that, and then we would activate the SSA in the coming year to fund maintenance going forward. We think it's a good decision in this situation because there's no owners association that's in place, and there's no mechanism for the subdivision that benefits from this basin to fund its maintenance other than through the SSA.
Thank you, Russ. Any questions or comments? David, go ahead.
So do you, I mean, it says the owner spent $37,000. Do you recommend, I mean, are you, unless I'm missing it, are you theorizing that's going to be about what or less?
So that was for the cost of doing some regrading, replanting of the basin, and kind of changing its design so that it functions to current standards. There's going to be some additional costs then associated with some of the additional items that were identified with establishing the plantings and the restoration. Our intent would be for the owner to cover those costs. And then going forward, when the city accepts it, we'll ideally be just doing minimal maintenance of what can be covered through the SSA because there's a limit as to how much we can tax. So that's something we're going to have to determine based on when they get us these numbers for the future maintenance, because sometimes that maintenance extends on over a couple of years, that we need to make sure that we have either funds to cover that or that the owner is going to provide that funding to us before they convey it.
I mean, you're not anticipating it's like millions of dollars or anything?
No.
Okay. Just curious, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Looking for a motion and second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by David, second by Ed. Roll call, please.
Gem?
Yes.
Trilla?
Yes.
Fester?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Kulkaitis?
Yes.
Vogt?
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes.
Munn?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Next up is item 4H, recommendation to approve an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Geneva for Division Street extension east of Kirk Road. Go ahead, Russ.
Yes, so Division Street is the Geneva St. Charles border on the east side. And Geneva recently approved a project for the southeast corner of Division and Kirk Road called the Bullock Campus, which is a multi-phase corporate campus for a business called Antunes, which manufactures commercial kitchen equipment. They're intending to develop a corporate headquarters here, which include offices, some manufacturing, some other related uses. That project's under final engineering review right now. Geneva's proposing that Division Street be extended to the east. It would primarily be within Geneva corporate limits, but there's a portion of it that would extend into St. Charles corporate limits at the intersection. So under this IGA, what's being proposed is that the landowner on the St. Charles side would provide a right-of-way dedication for Division Street, and St. Charles would agree to convey jurisdiction for that small portion of Division Street over to Geneva, so that it would be a Geneva-maintained and owned street. As part of the project, the Kirk and Division intersection will be improved. There's no changes to the west side of the intersection, but there would be a Park District trail that's shifted to the north based on the street extension. This street extension is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan in our boundary line agreement with the city of Geneva. We think it will also be a beneficial project for our east side industrial area and provide, particularly for the McNeil property that's shown on here, a new access location and ability to access to Kirk Road. So staff is recommending approval.
Okay, thank you, Russ. Any questions or comments? Ron?
I think you've answered it. So we will have a connection to the McNeil property, correct, as part of it?
Correct.
Okay, then I'm all for it.
Just a quick curiosity, on the west side of Kirk, you mentioned that obviously this is in agreement with our boundary agreement. Does the boundary agreement obviously it governs that side as well? I've always been curious, do we pave that road or what's the agreement with us?
I think on certain sections like this where the corporate limits actually follow the center line, it's sort of a shared responsibility for some of those things. And I think it varies because there's similar condition in Gray Street on the west side.
Kind of varies a bit.
Yeah, that there's cooperation between the two municipalities to maintain this.
I don't recall seeing two separate pavings. I assume somebody takes control over the whole thing, so.
Yeah, there's been cooperation, particularly when there's a road project, there's usually an agreement of who's kind of taking the lead in managing the project.
Okay, I was just curious.
Okay. Is there a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Moved by David,
Second?
seconded by Bob. Roll call, please.
Young,
Yes.
Petrillo,
Yes.
Fester,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Kulkaitis,
Yes.
Wolf,
Yes.
Bongard,
Yes.
Munn.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Item 4I, recommendation to approve a plat of dedication, a plat of easement for Division Street extension east of Kirk Road.
So these are just the easement and dedication documents to be able to designate right-of-way and create an easement for the street construction. So the city would sign off on these and accept the dedications, and then through the agreement and jurisdictional transfer, convey those to Geneva for their jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? A motion and a second to approve. Motion by Ryan, second by Mark. Roll call, please.
Young,
Yes.
Petrillo,
Yes.
Fester,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Kulkaitis,
Yes.
Wolf,
Yes.
Bongard,
Yes.
Munn.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Item 4J, recommendation to authorize city staff to release the request for proposals for the city-owned property at 122 South 2nd Street. Go ahead, Derek.
Yep. So we call this Building 8, Lot 4. And staff is seeking informal approval to release the request for a proposal for the city-owned property. So we don't need any signature, anything formal here. This is really just want to make sure that staff is in line with city council on this property. So you can see on the aerial to the right there, the red area, that would be the property that we're talking about. And we're just looking to issue a request for a proposal. So I think everyone here kind of generally knows what that means, but basically what we do, we're releasing a document out to the world, requesting that developers submit basically a packet of their idea of how they would develop the site. You narrow down to a few finalists, and then you make a selection from that point. The site, just a little bit of property information, so the location there, you can see. This is a relatively small piece of property. It's only 0.13 acres. You could probably fit a building about 4,500 square feet on it. It is zoned central downtown business, so they're very consistent with some of our other buildings in the area there. Just important to note, districts that this is in the overlay district, so that's something a developer will have to consider, and it is in the historic district, so that's something else also for them to consider. The good news is that this site is well served by a lot of the utilities, so water, sanitary, and electric. There's a transformer on the site already, so that won't be too much of an issue. Public improvements, staff would recommend that they complete the streetscape that is consistent with First Street. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but staff did just recently do an appraisal on this property, and it came back at $340,000. Submittals of the developers. So in the RFP document, it kind of says what the developer should be submitting to the city and for review. Of course, developer background, project narrative, preliminary drawings or renderings, not full details, but just kind of give us an idea of what it is. Construction schedule, financial demonstration. This is something that simply could be a letter from the bank saying, you know, this is one of my clients and I believe that they're capable of building this project. As we got further along, we would need more information to ensure that they actually could complete the project. And then the RFP does also include a section for financial contributions to the city. So with this being in the downtown, the utilities are there, and us completing an appraisal, we do think that there is an opportunity here for the city to actually collect money on this rather than just giving the property away. A lot of cities do, just want to see the development there, or it's a challenged property, that's why they have it usually, and just give it away. But if this was in the private, owned by a private property owner, they wouldn't just give it away, they would sell it. So that would be our staff recommendation, and we'll see what we get back on that. RFP timeline, developers would have until December 12th in order to submit, and then kind of go through the selection process and interviews in January. Hopefully we would be at presentations in February with a development agreement in spring. This would be kind of an optimistic view of how to get that done. Sometimes there's bumps, but this is kind of what we would be hoping for. As far as distribution of the RFP, we have a city contact list, so we'll be emailing these to all the developers we know. Through the Business Alliance, we do have a membership to CoStar, so this will be listed online as well. So hopefully reach a lot of people that way that are, brokers just looking in the area. And then we'll also distribute it through a lot of our realtor associations as well. So with that, I can take any questions about the site or process or any comments you have on the property.
Thanks, Terry. Ryan, go ahead.
Why December 12th?
Picked about 3 months from now, and that's just typically the time period that a developer would need in order to put together some type of due diligence on the property and put together renderings.
So does it have to be December 12th? To me, it seems, why are we limiting ourselves? So if this is not on a developer's radar, and we're going to go to our distribution list and kind of push this out, but if you're, developer X, and you didn't have this in your Q4 plans, you're now racing to potentially, hey, can we make this work, and, financing and concepts, and what are you doing? And I'm not saying I want this to be extended, but it's the city's, land. I want to maximize whatever, I'm going to go in there, and if that takes, 6 months, whatever. December 12th seems like you're going to blink, it's going to be October 15th, and unless there's something like this on your radar, my fear is you're going to get probably the same couple of hand raisers that know this market well, and you're kind of just going through the same, unless there's some specific reason why December 12th is our target. I'm not wild about the timeline.
I think that another consideration was that the potential for having construction start next year. So that's, we have to truncate the consideration of the time frame in order to meet that, but it doesn't necessarily have to. We certainly will, it will be out there for a while. We may get some other developers who they find out in November, they're like, well, it's too late. It's certainly a possibility. So.
Any other questions down here? Nothing down here. I have a couple questions. How do you anticipate, with Whole Foods being open now, how do you anticipate, what impact will that have as far as generating interest in that property? Because I know prior to that, there was very little interest.
Yeah, I think just having a Whole Foods in the market, people see that as a big value add in the long run. So we've already seen some properties in the downtown that have sold, and developers have said it's because of the Whole Foods that I bought this, because the asset just became that much more valuable with it being in the market.
Okay. All right, great. All right, is there a motion and second to approve?
Approval.
Moved by David.
Second.
Second by Mark. Roll call, please.
Yep.
Yes.
Petrillo?
Yes.
Fester?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Kulkaitis?
Yes.
Volk?
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes.
Munn?
Yes.
That passes. Okay, so item 4K, discussion regarding short-term rental registration program.
Yes. This is an update as a follow-up to a presentation in June where Community Development and the Business Alliance presented information on short-term rentals in the community, which is the first time we'd had a discussion of it since 2019. And from that meeting, the community directed staff to explore a registration program for short-term rentals and collection of the hotel tax from short-term rentals. So I wanted to just provide a brief update. So first, this concept of a registration program, what we're intending to do is establish contacts with the owners, operators, hosts, managers, and through a registration, increase awareness of the owner and host responsibility to be good neighbors. And we would create some operating standards to reduce the neighborhood impacts and monitor how effective those are, and have the ability through having this system to create some additional standards. So tonight at the end, I'll be seeking some feedback on a draft list of standards that would be incorporated. The hotel tax, so I know there was a little bit of confusion at the last meeting about whether the short-term rentals are subject to the hotel tax. And as it's written, they are subject to it, but the city has not pursued collection from short-term rentals in the past because we didn't have complete information on where they were located. It's a self-reported tax. So if we're going to go down that path to start collecting it, we're going to need to make sure we have some kind of uniform system to do that. So that's something we're looking into now. And the benefit, again, was stated at the previous meeting, those paying into the hotel tax will enable the operators to receive services from the Business Alliance, which some of them have already inquired about that and been told that unless they pay that tax, they can't receive those services for promotion. So we were able to connect with representatives from Airbnb to get some information based on what we were looking at and kind of what their practices are currently. So Airbnb, of the 47 listings that we located in June, 44 of those are on Airbnb, so by far most of them. There's only 3 of them that we found that were on VRBO and not Airbnb. A lot of them are cross-posted. Airbnb supports the type of registration program that we're discussing. They have a policy toolkit that they promote to other municipalities of what they think are reasonable systems to kind of monitor and regulate short-term rentals. They also initiated putting together some information for St. Charles specifically with creating a city portal website where staff has access to it to be able to enter official complaints or law enforcement requests. So they've created that specifically for St. Charles. And they also will have the ability to submit information for them to create a local page on responsible hosting that would have information about our regulations and information about the registration process. So that will be a designated page that anyone who has a listing in St. Charles would see. And they will help disseminate information about the registration and the tax when it's first created. However, they no longer are entering the tax collection agreements with cities. They haven't done these for the past few years. So as a result, the only way we're going to be able to collect that hotel tax is directly from the individual hosts as a self-reported tax. So that's going to make it a little more complicated, both for the city to collect and also for the hosts to track and pay.
Sorry to cut you off, but so Airbnb says they can't you make that a requirement? Because I completely understand the complexity of us having to do in the back end. Can you make that a requirement for somebody to have an Airbnb to say, this is a requirement for them to advertise on Airbnb's site and run that site? It's almost like a default way to ensure that you guys don't carry the burden at staff where Airbnb just backs away and says, well, we're not going to do that. You guys go do it. Like that, you can't sell alcohol in town without getting a liquor license. This is the cost of doing business. Yeah. How does Airbnb get away with doing that?
So, there's not a state statute that requires them to provide that service. They would say that they are just a platform and that the host for the operator is the business, and they are the ones that have responsible for the tax liability. And the way our code is set up, it is the business or the operator that is supposed to pay. So really that's, what they told us is they were entering these agreements some years ago, I think in the negotiations when they had some favorable terms allowing them to continue to operate, particularly with larger jurisdictions, also some small jurisdictions do this as well, that they felt like they were at a competitive disadvantage with their rates because of the additional tax that was being figured into the rate versus other platforms. That's at least their explanation to us. We have asked and have prodded them to say, is there an opportunity to do this? So obviously the trade-off is the administrative burden that the city is taking on trying to run this program then is higher. And one thing we'll definitely have to do is subscribe to that service, AirDNA, that provides us data so we'd have a basis to know what the individual operators are supposed to be paying to us. So that's something that we'll need to do. So this slide shows the information that we're proposing to have incorporated into this initial short-term rental registration program. This is an outline of the requirements, and we'll work on drafting a more detailed program description and kind of process associated with it. We do basic information about the location and address, the owner, the host and manager information, a 24-hour contact the city can use, information about the unit type and how many people can occupy it legally. The standards that we're initially proposing would be that on-site parking, where it is available, that it be utilized by the occupants. Airbnb has a policy against parties in their community disturbance policy that we think is, it's I think well understood among the hosts that that's a standard that we could follow. We would have a little bit more of an enforcement tool, I think, than Airbnb might because of our local information, our ability to run the registration program. We'd have occupancy limits based on the registration. And one of the things that we've received complaints about is how refuse containers are handled at these units. So having a requirement that they be stored and not visible from the street, and also compliance with all of our noise regulations, and that will be connected to our nuisance abatement chapter. I also wanted to note that Airbnb provided us information about their background check program that they have for their platform users, that there is some type of background check that's going on with their users. I know there was, I think, a question about that at the previous meeting. So from the enforcement side, we'd have the owner sign off on acknowledging that they're responsible for ensuring compliance with the requirements. We wouldn't propose any type of inspections, but there may be situations where the city would have to go into a unit and verify information that something's legal to occupy or that their parking is provided as they've identified. The ability to suspend or revoke a registration if the standards aren't met or the hotel tax isn't paid, fine for operating without registration, a fine structure where there's increasing penalties for repeat offenses, not renewing taxes or not renewing registration if taxes aren't paid, and as I mentioned, connecting with the nuisance abatement program. We would be subscribing to the AirDNA program to be able to get the hotel tax verification information. We wouldn't propose any type of fee since we'll be covering that tax, and the tax that would be applied is the same that currently applies to hotels, and that the short-term rentals would fall in that same category. So we're still working through kind of the logistics of what the program would look like in terms of how someone would register and how they would pay that tax. And I think we're not going to bring this forward until we have a clear system for how that's going to work, but obviously it needs to be user-friendly enough that it's utilized correctly and that we are able to track it from an administrative standpoint without us having to track down users well after they've already incurred the tax liability, because then it's more difficult, particularly because some of these units may disappear from a listing service. So that's going to be a challenge that I think we'll need to still explore.
Okay, fine.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think the main reason why we kind of brought this up was because of the owner not being present and then how it was being used and the impact around the neighbors around it. So is there a way that is kind of like documented to be like, we are here for this purpose for this many hours to do this, to keep it away from becoming a frat house on a Saturday to watch college football or something like that? Because I think that was originally kind of the fear that these places were popping up are a few in pretty established neighborhoods with young children, and people were coming into these and using it as kind of like a party house for a night. So I guess it's more of that concern of, are we making sure, I understand the tax side and all that, which is something, but are we making sure that those places are being used for what they are intended for and not for something else?
Yeah, so I think we're going to try through these standards to, put in some guidelines of what those limitations are, and also kind of increase the involvement and commitment of the owner to be responsible for how the property is utilized. So we may be able to incorporate a standard regarding how they go about managing the property and verifying the condition of the property and what's going on at the property to try and address that and see if by having this more formalized process we're able to have a little bit more accountability and responsiveness from the operators.
Okay, good, thank you.
Ryan?
Yeah, so this kind of resonated from the second ward with, one particular house. So I think, and I'm not going to speak for my colleague, but I think that this is a really good first step. And I think the standards that you've laid out, you're trying to put more accountability enforcement around, the owner of that property and holding there and at least having a starting point with some of these ways that they have to register, they have to adhere to this. So I think it's a really good, first step. And, hopefully it helps. I know we haven't had many similar issues that we've had in the second ward, but I think that this is a good starting point.
Ron?
Thank you. I fully support this, but as you said, it's going to be hard to actually keep track of everything, right? Okay, I'm just throwing this out there. Wouldn't it be easier just to have a flat registration fee?
We've looked into that. I think one of the first things we need to do is obtain that data from AirDNA to see how much variation is there in the revenue that's being generated from the units. Because I imagine that there's probably certain units that are run, more like a business and probably generating much higher revenue versus some that aren't. And it's hard for us, I think, to distinguish. We're trying to come up with different criteria to say, if it's operated in a certain manner, that should pay the higher fee. So I think what we'd be concerned about is probably the ones that generate the most revenue, we'd be missing out on a lot of the potential tax because we've tried to find a fee that's a little more fair to everyone. So that's an idea we've thought about, and I don't know if we have enough confidence yet without having the data to know if we can come up with a fee structure that makes sense.
I think it's going to be hard to do it. I mean, and how do you, one of your things is fine for operating without registration. Well, how are you going to know who they are if they're not registered? I understand the concept, don't get me wrong, but I just think, I'm in favor of it, but I think we're going to have to try it and see what happens, I guess, and take it as we go along.
Yeah, this service that provides the data will provide us information on the listings that exist at a given point in time. And when new ones appear, we'll be aware of that, and there's some information associated with it. We don't always have the exact location of where it is, but we've been able to find almost all of them just based on data. So I think it will be somewhat of a challenge.
So would we, just hypothetically, so if we implement it, we would go off that Airbnb list, and we would go ask them, hey, here's what you have to do, or would they come to us knowing that we're doing this? Or am I getting ahead of the game?
Yeah, so the company that I'm talking about, AirDNA, is what they're called. They're separate, but they have contracts to receive data from Airbnb and VRBO. Mm-hmm. So they will have data there that we can purchase for our use to be able to track that. What Airbnb has told us is that they, once we have a program in place, we can provide the information to them to have it listed with their local information for St. Charles, and they'll also send out information to the host to notify them that there is this new program that they need to comply with, and some instructions that they can turn on a tax calculation within the listing. The hosts have to do that, but to make them aware of that option, to try and at least as an initial rollout, the communication, I think, will be there from Airbnb. Going forward, it's something that, we're going to have to just keep an eye on as new listings pop up.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to echo what Alderman Bongard said. This did come from our ward, from, an issue that's persistent in our area, and there are some unique features to that are different from other wards. My question is, does a hotel need a business license?
They do not, because we don't have a general business license that would apply to a hotel, no.
Oh, so like a Hilton Garden doesn't need a business license?
No,
to operate?
Not from the city.
Oh, okay.
Not until we implement, coming off of that conversation at the workshop, that we will be implementing those business licenses, so that would be the first
Well, that's
step.
what I mean. Yep. If we were to implement business licenses, would a hotel be subject to that?
Yes, if it was part of a business license program, yes.
So that's my question, is why would we not include an Airbnb in that same realm? Why would this be a separate item? We would tax that, but why would we also not want to register them?
So I think, the way this program is being set up, it's kind of unique because these are residential units, and they're being rented out for short periods of time.
As a
So
business.
some jurisdictions have rental registration or licensing programs for any type of unit that's rented, and we don't have that in St. Charles. So this is sort of an in-between where if a residential unit is being used in this way, because it's a little bit unique, and we have the ability then to sort of track that as a special condition. It's a little bit different than just a rental with a residential unit or a business. So it's kind of through the way we'll set up the program, we're going to need to identify this is it's really a privilege and a benefit to be able to use a residential property this way, and it requires you to go through this registration process so that you're committing to following these standards because of the way that it's operated. So it is calling it out as something different.
And that was where I was going with that. It's about the accountability of that property owner who is operating that residential property as a business. And that's where I'm going with that, is we want to ensure that that level of accountability is being factored in here. It's not about the revenue from the tax. That's not really where any of this was intended to be pursuing, or even a fee from a business license. It's the accountability of knowing that there's the responsibility there, and that the people that live around that home know that accountability is there. So I guess that's what I just want to make sure that's happening. I'm still not sure I fully understand how, and this is probably too in the weeds, but I don't really understand if the owner is responsible for paying the taxes. Is that the data that AirDNA is providing you? Is the revenue from?
Yes, they receive data on the revenue directly from Airbnb and VRBO.
So that's what you would be using?
Yes, so we would know based on that data what they should be paying.
And then my last question is, so because we're not subscribers yet to that, this number of 44 out of the 47, that is just based on your research not having that full amount of data.
Yeah.
So it's possible that there are more than that.
Correct. So I would expect the number probably fluctuates some, but that was the number that was on the list that they generated in June.
Okay. Oh, so that did come from them.
Yes, they provided us with a number, and we figured out most of the locations, but we were not able to get access to the level of data to be able to do anything more other than look at the total revenue that was generated to be able to calculate what the expected tax amount is, but not individual units.
Okay. I wasn't clear if that came from an internal search of
property. No, it was partially an internal search, partially just the free data that they're willing to share with us as a part of us learning about their program.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ed?
Russ, with this program, is the city, if you were to put something like this in place or a variance of this, is the city exempt from any harm, meaning fire detectors, CO detectors? How deep in the woods do we get if we sponsor or implement a program?
Yeah, so that would be a function of kind of how we set the program up. I think our intent would be to say that the city is not necessarily approving the occupancy of the space because it's a residential unit, like any other residential unit in the community, and that the liability is really on the owner who is owning and maintaining that unit to be sure that it's safe to occupy, because we don't have that type of a rental license program. But we would also need to be clear in the registration that this recognition through the city, it only grants you certain things. It doesn't grant you any type of legal protection necessarily from other issues encountered with the use of the property by a tenant.
But we wouldn't have to do an initial inspection or anything like that. I know we talked about this in the past with rental agreements.
Right, only if we wanted to, but because we don't have a program to do that, and we're treating these as residential units, and we don't inspect other residential units, it would not be consistent to have an inspection for this type of
And then is there a way to put in a 2 or 3 strike rule where, they lose the ability to, do their Airbnb for a year or 6 months if there's issues like in the second ward where there's partying going on a number of times?
Yeah, we can incorporate something like that into the program, because the intent with the progressive fine structure is you may reach a point where we would say we won't renew your
the fines are great. I don't know, how high or expensive they'll get. If they're making money, it might not affect them as much, but if we can figure out a way to stop them in their tracks and make them realize what they're doing, that would be awesome, I think.
Yes.
Mayor Hall?
Yeah, I agree with what council, when we're talking about, really, it's neighborhood standards. And when I think about it from the police perspective and what I heard, from my time as a prosecutor and as a judge, they need to know what standards there are. And so I'm trying to figure out, when we have this behavior, and I can't think of the woman who emailed, there's a woman who's been emailing about how every weekend there's bachelorette parties there, doors are opening and closing, all hours of the night. So who's going to enforce? So let's say that that's occurring. It's 11 o'clock, it's 11:30 at night. They're not abiding by the neighborhood standards that we put together. Who's getting called? And what are the police, So I need to understand, and I think it's important when we talk about these standards, that whoever's enforcing it, whether it be police or code, they have to have very specific and delineated standards as to what our expectations are. And I 100% agree with Ed and what we need to have the ability to revoke that license and their ability to do this, because if you go back to, again, both Ryan and Jamie have talked about it in their neighborhood, but we have another one where it's just continuing every weekend, and they go over there and there's no one to talk to. What she talked about is that they don't know who even owns the house. And when they go over there, the people, the owners aren't there, there's no one to complain to. So can you take me through who would be citing these and how it would occur?
And I think, to your point about the contact, so this would establish a formal contact both with the owner and the operator. So there would be someone for us to go to if a neighbor comes to us and says, we have an issue with this house next door. We'll know who to call and know that they have some responsibility to address those concerns. But if it's a call in the evening, it's likely that the police would be responding, particularly if it's something that's noise related or something that's disruptive. And part of the process to get that established is to generate a report or a complaint about an issue. And so when those situations come up, that police responds, they'll provide the information to community development for us to follow up and research, what the issue was and contact the owner about what was observed or what was heard or was documented, and determine if, are they violating an ordinance or are they just being disruptive to the neighborhood. And so we're going to have to kind of keep some records on that to build a case. But there would be, once we have this program in place, there would be a sort of a structure for us to do that. Right now, there really isn't. We try to find the owners and reach out to them. They're not always the one who are managing the unit.
I think that's really important, because the woman who's emailing in the 4th talks about there's no one to talk to, and the belief is that it's an investor, and that this person doesn't live in St. Charles or isn't around St. Charles, and so I again go back to being very supportive of a 3-strike rule or something where if they continually violate, that we have the ability to not only pull that, but then to somehow figure out an enforcement mechanism. Because if not, no matter, it's just kind of, not to talk about e-bikes and that kind of thing, you can legislate whatever you want, but if you can't enforce it, our credibility, with the neighbors and anybody else is really shot. So I'm fully supportive of it, but we just have to make sure that whatever we do it in a way in which when that happens, we have the ability to effectuate the change that we want to.
David, go ahead.
To the mayor's point, that of course makes sense. Is that going to be governed mostly under the nuisance ordinance, these procedures? Because I kind of took a glance at it. There seem to be some procedures.
Yeah, so we would connect these requirements to the nuisance abatement program and have so that violations of this registration program would also count against the nuisance abatement section, which includes a whole bunch of other code violations. But we'd have a separate process within this registration program to identify how it's enforced and to follow up, into the mayor's point, have the enforcement be effective against stopping the registration of the use of the property. So we'll have to set that up through how the program is drafted. Yes, it would also be connected to the nuisance abatement if we end up, there may be a property, for example, that has other code violations or other issues of crime and police response data where, they can, a violation of the short-term rental registration can also be considered as an additional issue on the property to justify taking it through nuisance abatement.
Okay. I just have a quick question. So obviously we want to make sure that you have these short-term rentals in the neighborhoods, that they're not impacting the quality of life in a negative way, and enforcement's an important, can we do something with adjudication hearing, like put that in there as part of the process? If you're building up, hey, this is your first fine, your second, you go to, whatever it is, Thursday nights, and is that something we can maybe consider?
Yeah, so I think we would incorporate this into a similar, enforcement program that we have. So it could be routed through adjudication so that, anyone who receives any type of violation or fine has an ability to, appeal it through that process.
Yeah, just as long as there's a process in place where we're, okay, great. Ryan, go ahead.
I think you've set this up the right way. I think where the missing component of all this is the dynamic between the city of St. Charles and Airbnb itself as a platform. So if you've got a negligent homeowner who's not listening to, the concerns of the neighborhood, the residents, you can cut this off at the knees by going directly to Airbnb and say, they can't list on your platform. So if you've got somebody who's not, because they have to be accountable to the city. So if you're going to do adjudication, you're going to try and fine them. But if you go to Airbnb, they won't let that person advertise their spot. That becomes whether you have a business license or accountability, going directly with that paper trail to say, here's 3 documented records. The homeowner's not following it, they can't advertise. And based on what I've seen with Airbnb, they respond to those quickly because it hurts their reputation.
Yeah, and I think, I can't guarantee how quickly they will respond, but they definitely look for jurisdictions to have some kind of formal process and documentation to show that there is an issue. Once we have this in place and it's documented with them that we have this registration system and we come to them with, a chronic issue property, that, they'll know that we have a system for which it's been evaluated, and I think would be more likely to take action.
Ron, go ahead.
So you're talking about, this is going to be kind of, I think a lot of staff time to set this up, right?
Yes, at least to set it up.
Right, okay, so what if we then charge a one-time registration fee? One time you pay it once you register, you don't pay it again, to offset some of these costs. Because like when a hotel pays a 6% tax, we don't have to do anything, do we? We just get the money. Here we're going to have to work for the money. It's going to cost us money to collect that money. So if you have a one-time registration fee, whatever number is fair to cover our costs, not to make money on the fee, just to cover our expenses to collect the fee.
Yeah, that is an option.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
David?
So, just so I'm 100% clear here, so you just want recommendations from direction from us, which I think you've gotten, of course, regarding the teeth that we talked about. You're going to come back with a new, an actual ordinance?
Yeah, so a little more formalized program that'll go into the details of kind of the enforcement process, the things that there's been questions on. But this was just meant to be a follow-up conversation based on our conversation with Airbnb.
Do you anticipate that to be soon, or what do you think?
I would hope to bring it back in the next couple of months.
Okay. Okay, Vicki, are you on? I see your hand is raised. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? It sounds like we're all on the same page with this, and it looks like you can move forward with what you
Well done, thanks, Russ.
Thanks, Russ.
And I think building in that accountability and finding the owners is going to help do that. Now we at least got some leverage to be able to pull that, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, public comment, we already did that, we moved it. So any additional items from mayor, council, or staff? Jamie, go ahead.
I understand that there's a Habitat for Humanity Volunteer Day.
Yes.
It's coming
Saturday.
That announced?
I don't
Is
know
that
how
something
far.
that's
I think it's
open?
for the housing commission, I thought.
Yeah, is that something that's open to council, or do we need to do something for that? And I apologize if that was announced or I missed that in the last.
That was, the housing commission wanted to do a volunteer day, and we had a few open spots, so I reached out to the board aldermen, to see if they wanted to fill those spots. We have a few more open spots, still. waiting to see kind of who's going to have position registered, because we're captive.
Gotcha. Okay, I wasn't sure about that. Thank
If you want, you can take my spot since I will be out of town.
We can talk about that. Thank you. And then my other question is, and I don't know if, and I don't mean to put you on the spot on this, Director Stewart, but I was curious now that we have the really great completed streets in Fox Chase, I was curious if there was any information about potentially putting down the bike lanes in that subdivision to complete that street.
I'd have to check with you on that one.
Okay.
See where those are planned, so I can be back to that.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? No? Okay, so we do have executive session. We'll be going in to discuss property acquisition, so I need a motion to go into executive session and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Jamie, moved by Jamie, second by Bob. Roll call, please.
Camp,
Yes.
Trillo,
Yes.
Spellman, Chester,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Kulturitis,
Yes.
Volk,
Yes.
Bongard,
Yes.
Munn.
Yes.
Okay, we are now in executive session.